was one of those nights, the kind where the house feels too quiet and every creak seems a little too deliberate. That's the thing about being alone. Your mind starts filling in the blanks, making you hear things that aren't there. But sometimes, those things are there. Here are 3 chilling accounts from people who lived through something terrifying while alone in their homes. These stories aren't just campfire tales. They're real. The Man in the Hallway. Submitted by Claire M. It happened last fall. I just moved into a cozy little duplex in a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place where people wave at you when you're walking your dog. Safe, or so I thought. That night I was curled up on the couch with a blanket, binge-watching some cheesy true crime show. It was past midnight when I heard it, the faint sound of footsteps upstairs. Now, my duplex had an attic, but it was empty. The realtor even showed it to me, just to prove there was no hidden water damage or critters living up there, so I figured the sound was my imagination. I paused the show and strained to listen. Silence. Maybe it was just the house settling, I told myself. But then I heard it again, slow, deliberate steps, like someone was pacing. My heart started pounding. I grabbed my phone ready to call the police, but then I hesitated. What if it really was just the house? I didn't want to be that person who called 911 over nothing. So I mustered up some courage and grabbed a broom from the kitchen. As quietly as I could, I climbed the narrow stairs to the attic door. The steps creaked under my weight, but the footsteps above me didn't stop. When I reached the door, I held my breath. My hand shook as I twisted the knob and pushed it open. The attic was empty. But here's the thing. The footsteps didn't stop. They were coming from the hallway behind me. I spun around, but there was no one there. Just the dim light from the living room casting long shadows. My gut told me to get out of the house, but my legs wouldn't move. Then I saw it. A shape at the end of the hallway, just standing there. It wasn't a person, at least not anymore. Its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and its eyes... I'll never forget those eyes. Empty, like they were made of black glass. I ran out of the house, barefoot and clutching the broom like it would protect me. I stayed at a friend's place that night and called the landlord the next morning. He didn't seem surprised when I told him what happened. Yeah, the last tenant complained about weird stuff too, he said. I moved out 2 weeks later. The Shadow in the Kitchen. Submitted by Kevin L. I was 16 when it happened. My parents had gone out for the evening, leaving me in charge of my little brother, Max. He was 7 at the time and a total handful, always running around and getting into trouble. Around 9 p.m., Max had fallen asleep on the couch, so I carried him to his room and tucked him in. After that, I went back downstairs to play video games. About an hour later, I heard this faint tapping sound coming from the kitchen. At first I thought it was Max trying to sneak a snack. "Max, get back to bed," I yelled. The tapping stopped. I waited a few seconds, then shrugged it off. But as soon as I unpaused my game, the tapping started again. It was louder this time, like someone drumming their fingers on the counter. Annoyed, I stomped into the kitchen, ready to catch Max in the act. But the kitchen was empty. Then I noticed the window over the sink. The curtain was swaying slightly, like someone had just moved it. My stomach dropped. I bolted the back door and turned on every light in the house. I even checked on Max to make sure he was still in bed. He was, snoring like a chainsaw. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but then the noises started again. This time, it wasn't tapping. It was a soft, raspy whisper. It was coming from the pantry. I don't know how to describe the sound exactly, but it wasn't a voice. It was more like breathing, but wet, like someone trying to suck air through a mouthful of water. I grabbed a knife from the counter and yanked the pantry door open. Nothing, just shelves of canned food and cereal boxes. I was about to close the door when I noticed something. A handprint on the inside of the door, smeared like someone had dragged their fingers down it. But here's the thing. The handprint was too big to be mine, and it was too fresh to have been there before. I didn't sleep that night. The Face at the Window, submitted by Maria R. This happened when I was living alone in a tiny studio apartment downtown. It wasn't the best neighborhood, but it was what I could afford at the time. One night, I was up late working on a freelance project. My desk faced the window which overlooked the alley behind the building. Normally, I kept the curtains closed, but it was a hot night, and I needed the breeze. Around 2 a.m., I got up to make some tea. As I passed the window, I glanced outside, and that's when I saw it. A face. It was pressed up against the glass, pale and distorted, like whoever it was had been staring in for a while. I froze. The face didn't move, it just stared, its mouth slightly open like it was trying to say something. I backed away slowly, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911. As I spoke to the operator, the face disappeared. When the cops arrived, they checked the alley but didn't find anyone. The officer told me it was probably just some drunk wandering around, but I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I found scratches on the outside of the window frame, like someone had been trying to pry it open. I moved out a month later. These are just 3 stories, but they all share one thing: the gut-wrenching terror of realizing you're not as alone as you think you are. So the next time you hear a noise in your empty house, maybe don't brush it off so quickly. After all, you never know who or what might be watching.
It started on a Tuesday night. I remember because I'd just gotten back from my evening shift at the diner, dead tired and ready to collapse on the couch. My little rental house sat at the edge of town, surrounded by nothing but fields and trees. It was peaceful, sure, but also the kind of place where you'd be screwed if something went wrong. No neighbors close enough to hear you scream. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and immediately felt off. You ever walk into a room and feel like you're interrupting something? Like the air's just heavier? That's how it felt. But I chalked it up to being tired and shook it off. After microwaving some leftovers, I plopped onto the couch and started scrolling through my phone. Typical night, right? About an hour later, I heard the first noise. It was a soft thud, like something falling over. At first, I thought it came from the kitchen. Maybe I'd left a dish too close to the edge of the counter or something. I got up, checked it out. Nothing. Everything was exactly where I'd left it. Probably just the house settling, I muttered to myself. But when I went back to the couch, I noticed something weird. The blanket I always kept folded on the armrest was now draped over the back of the couch. I hadn't touched it. I froze, staring at the blanket like it might move again. My brain was racing, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Had I knocked it over earlier without realizing? Then came the second noise. This one was louder, a sharp crack from upstairs like someone had stepped on a loose floorboard. I lived alone. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and stood there for a minute, listening. The house was dead silent again. I thought about calling someone, the cops maybe, or my friend Jess. But I didn't want to look like an idiot. Get a grip, I told myself. It's nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. I decided to check upstairs, even though every horror movie I'd ever seen screamed at me not to. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer, just in case. The stairs creaked under my weight as I climbed. With each step, my pulse pounded harder in my ears. When I reached the top, I stood in the hallway, shining the flashlight into each room. Bedroom, empty. Bathroom, empty. Guest room, also empty. But just as I was about to go back downstairs, I heard it again. A soft, almost imperceptible sound, like breathing. It was coming from the closet at the end of the hall. I stood there, frozen, my flashlight beam trembling as I pointed it at the closet door. The sound stopped. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. No response. I inched closer, every instinct in my body screaming at me to turn around and run. When I reached the door, I wrapped my hand around the knob, took a deep breath, and yanked it open. Nothing. Just a pile of old coats and boxes. I laughed nervously, feeling stupid. But as I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A shoe print on the carpet inside the closet. It wasn't mine. I didn't sleep that night. Every little sound made me jump. I locked all the doors and windows, double-checked them, then triple-checked them. By 3 a.m., I was sitting on the couch with every light in the house turned on, clutching a kitchen knife like some kind of amateur horror movie heroine. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a reflection. The living room window was dark, the glass like a mirror with the lights on inside. Then I realized the face staring back at me wasn't my own. It was outside. I screamed and stumbled back, knocking over a lamp. The face disappeared, but I didn't wait to see if it would come back. I grabbed my phone and called 911. The operator told me to stay on the line while they dispatched an officer. I couldn't stop pacing, my eyes darting to every window, every shadow. When the police arrived, they didn't find anyone. No footprints outside, no signs of forced entry. Nothing. Probably just a prank, one of the officers said. Kids messing around. I nodded, but I didn't believe it. A few nights later, I woke up around 2 a.m. to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. I had locked it. My heart felt like it was going to explode as I reached for the baseball bat I kept under the bed. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just stared at the doorway. A shadow moved across the hallway. I bolted out of bed, swinging the bat wildly as I ran for the front door. I didn't stop running until I was halfway down the street. When the cops came again, they found something this time. Scratches on the inside of the bedroom door, like someone had been clawing at it. I moved out the next day. They say your home is supposed to be your sanctuary, your escape from the chaos of the world. But what do you do when the chaos finds you there? This wasn't just my story. It's a warning, because sometimes, when you're alone in the dark, you're not really alone at all.